Hi, and welcome to Wait, Hold Up, What? A podcast that talks about all things us. In this episode, we delve into the journey of Janelle Suzanne, a successful entrepreneur, single mother, and advocate for women and girls. Janelle is just one of those people that lights up a room and makes you think, oh, I can do this. I don't know what it is about her, but she gives you kind of the courage and strength to go after what you're doing. And I met her in a storytelling community, and that's exactly what she did for me. There were so many aha moments that I had with her. Her story begins with a reflection on her childhood, where her strong willed nature was often viewed through a negative lens in a culture that expected girls to be meek, quiet, and submissive. Despite this, she harnessed her determination and resilience to overcome personal and professional obstacles, leading her to thrive as a managing partner and chief marketing officer of Louder Agency. And of course, her favorite job, a devoted mother. Please welcome Janelle Suzanne to Wait, Hold Up, What? And get ready to pull out those pens and papers and be inspired. Did you know that 80% of the world's purchases are influenced and made by women? Or that 90% of product development, manufacturing, and corporate leadership is led by men? I don't know about you, but that seems like some funky, disconnected math. This disconnect means large segments of the population are not getting their needs met because the products being made never even asked us what problems we needed to solve. Instead, companies use a pink it and shrink it philosophy. Not familiar? I bet you are. You know it. Take a man's product, make it smaller, paint it pink, sell it for 25% more. Then, when the products fail to make a dent in the market or to sell rapidly, they say things like, the market wasn't ready. Or, we were so sure it was going to work, I wonder what happened. And then they move on. I'm here to tell you, the market is most definitely ready. But the market is savvy, and putting some paint and saying it was designed for us is a slap in the face. We have real needs, and we're not settling for anything less than real solutions. If this sounds familiar to you and your business, then it's time to connect with Eliminate Girl Hate. We help businesses understand the lucrative consumer segment of women and how to meet their needs in authentic ways. From problem solving, product creation, marketing, and even human resource practices, we help create safe and equitable spaces for the female segment. And these safe spaces increase profit margins, employee retention, and brand loyalty along the way. It's time to start a revolution and meet your consumers where they are. It's time to eliminate girl hate. Check us out, eliminategirlhate.com, and find out how we can help your business today. Have you ever dreamed of writing a book? I know I have. Or maybe, also like me, you've started a manuscript. Maybe you've started 10 and you've just never finished it, or never let anybody else read it, or never thought you could publish it. Wherever you are in the process, Jim Woods would like to help. Jim's a writer just like you, but he's also a coach who loves helping writers bring their books into the world and make them a reality. If you are like me, sometimes you need that push, a supportive but demanding cohort along the way to put your stories out into the world and keep you on track. Jim Woods is that cohort. Visit jimwoodswrites.com and click the Let's Chat button. Mention our podcast for a free clarity call and get your story out into the world because we need it. We are sponsored by Epiphany Recording Studio. Creativity needs to flow freely if you want to reach that aha moment that we're all looking for. At Epiphany Recording Studio, their goal is to create space that takes full advantage of those moments. From podcast and video production to music creation, you get the support you need to create compelling stories with a competitive sound. Your ideas can flow freely because they partner with you free of judgment, ready to be vulnerable, do the work, and make your projects look and sound their best. So let Epiphany Recording Studio help you reach your artistic vision by visiting them today at epiphanyrecordingstudio.com. Tell them Dawn sent you. So my guest today is Janelle Suzanne, and I kind of like to start every episode by just asking you to tell me what you do, a little bit about yourself. Doesn't have to be crazy, but we'll get into some things later. But let the listeners know what you do.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks again for having me. I love what you're doing here, so it's great to be on. I am a managing partner and the chief marketing officer at Louder Agency. Louder, the opposite of quieter, if you're wondering what I'm saying. Sometimes people can't understand. Also at Mosaic Path, And then some exciting news of a new business I'm about to launch called Her Jobs. So, more on that in the future, but just kind of dropping that there.
I already like the name. Her Job sounds amazing. What kind of agency is Louder?
So, we do all the digital marketing from websites through implementation, reporting, all the marketing. We do work with a lot of purposeful brands and nonprofits serving vulnerable people groups.
Awesome. That's actually how I met you. I was in a storytelling coaching group, and Janelle came in with one of her partners, Ben Stewart. Shout out, Ben, and really helped a lot of us smaller entrepreneurs understand our messaging and our purpose around our messaging and help kind of frame that, which was extremely impactful. So, if you are a small business or medium business or a large business, go to Louder. I'm serious. They are such an amazing group to work with, and they really work to help you find your message, not the other way around. And sometimes agencies, no disrespect to any, but it can seem like they don't fully understand the small business and the connection that you have when it is a small business and the way that you care about what you're doing. It's just slightly different than those bigger companies. And so I think you guys do a really nice job of letting those people be seen and heard and express themselves in positive ways for their brands. So thank you both for that, and your team for that, for what you guys have done for me. So now the Love Fest is, kind of done. Um,
What a great shout out.
right?
I need you to be my cheerleader every day. Yeah, no, I sit a lot on the strategy and messaging strategy side, and I get so excited to just really dig into the heart of a brand and what makes them beat, and but also how do we take who you are as a brand or as a person and communicate that in a way that's going to connect with the story that your audience is telling themselves. And
Yeah.
so, right, it's entering into that story. So we get to do a lot of that. But
And
yeah.
authentic storytelling is so important. Like, I
Yeah.
think in this modern age of social media and digital media, a lot of that gets missed because it's like you're trying to be everything for everybody. But when you sit in that authenticity and you tell the story of why you're doing what you do, the right people will come to your business. And so it's about staying firm in that. And sometimes that can be hard to do as a small business owner because you're so worried about where that next dollar is coming from. And so you might go outside of what you really want to do. And so I think it helps to have people in your corner that help that foundation stay strong.
Absolutely. Well, and that's why I love what you're doing here of telling authentic stories. I remember when we first started talking, you mentioned to me you wanted a story that was authentic to me, that was true to
Mhm.
me, not just, oh, what's something around what someone,
Yeah.
about women or this, that isn't personal, but what is your personal story?
Yeah.
And so I love the way that you're drawing that out of your
Oh,
guests on your new podcast.
yeah. It's so exciting. So when I talk to all of the guests before they come on, and we try to understand where do they connect and where do they fit into the messaging. And you and I had some really interesting conversations about, as women that grew up of a certain generation or our generation. I mean, I'm sure every generation has their things, right? But the way in which we were raised and the narratives that were put towards us as
Right.
girls, and how being strong-willed or opinionated or even just loud, not to pun up the name of your company, but how that sometimes a negative narrative was created around that and told to us. And then we talked about what that does when you start having kids, and the narrative you help to foster your own child's growth and things of that nature. So that implies that both of us, without giving the cart away before the horse or whatever that expression is, that you were strong-willed as a child. So I would love to kind of start there and talk a little bit about your experience growing up as a girl and how that was portrayed to you, for you, about you, and your experience with that.
Absolutely. So, I can look at it from a bit of 2 points. There's the cultural experience of my family, and then the cultural experience of growing up in the 80s and 90s and the messages that were fed to us that way. As specifically in my family and growing up in a community of faith, it was expected and encouraged for girls to be meek and quiet and submissive. And that was like our crowning jewel almost of what we were supposed to be. And so, as my mom says, I was born screaming. And I think along with that came my strong willed nature. But I was told I was strong-willed again and again, as if it was the scarlet letter that I wore on my chest,
Mm-hmm.
rather than all of the positive attributes that it can be seen for. And it was something that I really struggled with in my identity. And even at times I tried to suppress it so much that I lost like who am I actually at my core? What are my natural instincts? I would go to take a personality test and not even know how to answer because I wrestled so much with who I was. And now I'm at a very different place where I very much embrace that I am strong-willed, and I embrace the positives of that and what comes with that and how that has helped me in my life throughout my journey.
Do you think as you grew up, were both parents in the home?
Yes, they
Okay.
were.
So, did you feel that that messaging came both from your mother and or I don't even wanna say that,
Mhm.
female family members and male family members? It came from
Y-
both?
It really did come from both. I think a lot of it is because it is rooted in our faith.
Mhm.
And though I'm still a person of faith, it is I don't believe that we look at that scripture necessarily correctly in the way of that I'm to always be meek and quiet and submissive, and that means I can't use the God-given gifts. And I really believe it's a gift to be strong-willed. And there's some beautiful traits that come with it. But as you ask about men versus the women, I think it's really interesting if you look at our culture, even still today, but even more prominent as we were growing up, of just the different connotations with strong willed when you're talking about a strong willed woman versus a strong willed man. So when we think of men being strong willed in culture and in movies or TV shows, they are stoic and assertive. They're someone who knows what they want. These are the Captain Americas, right? These are Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, right? Who's this stoic, brave leader, and he's rising to kingship through his unwavering determination and sense of duty, right? So there's such a positive connotation. And then we have roles like Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada, right?
Yeah.
Her strong-willed, her determination to achieve is seen as demanding and a harsh boss, and framed as overbearing and intimidating. Or Monica Geller in Friends, right? Like one of my
Yes.
all-time favorite shows. She is seen as like none of us wanted to
Great.
be Monica, right? Because
Yep.
she's controlling and she's competitive and she's labeled as bossy and often seen as annoying by her friends for what's really good intentions and caring nature of wanting to pursue what is good, standing by her beliefs.
Yep.
And that was portrayed as negative in
Yeah.
in that show. So those are just some ways, even in culture, that
Yes.
that was
And,
supported.
there's all sorts of research that even shows this in the workplace, and that
Yes.
same skill set is promotable and more money comes with it if you're a man, but it's demotable and less money comes with it as a woman. I had an experience at work once where a boss told me I was too aggressive. And
Mm.
I was like, "Really? Am I?" And I asked him, and I won't use names here, but I said, or I'll use a fake name, "Am I more aggressive than Bob?" And the boss sat back in his chair and went, "Okay, point taken." And it was I felt so, like, brave, like, I can't believe I said that. But, I was raised, I don't wanna say raised similarly, but I had the same messaging as a child, but it was more in a sarcastic and joking way. And so it was harder to know, like, it was much more subconscious, right? So it was always a joke about how much I talked and how I should let my brother talk. We were at a conference together, Story, in 2022, and when I presented on stage, I started by saying that one of my family's favorite story is my brother and I would go places and someone would ask us what we'd like to drink, and when they would ask my brother, he would look at me, I'd look back, he'd nod, I'd turn around and say, "He'll have milk." And it was just because he was a little bit meeker than I, shyer than I was. I was the older sister, and so we had this kind of twin speak, even though we weren't twins, we were 17 months apart, And that became this story or this folklore around how I was bossy and I overstepped and I talked too much and I did those things. And I can honestly say that it is just within the last 3 or 4 years that that narrative is being reframed for myself. In that, wow, look at all the amazing things that that allowed me to do. Instead of me coming home every night and going, oh my gosh, why did I talk so much? And why did I do this? Or why did I take control of that? Or, and so it is something that stays with you, even when people might not think they are intentionally doing that narrative, right? Because a lot of times people will come on here and they'll talk about their childhood and then they'll call me or whatever and they'll be like, oh, my mom was like, so I guess I'm just a horrible mom. Or the dad will be like, I guess I did everything wrong. And that's not what's happening in these dialogues. I just think we know so much more now about how those types of things shape us and the autonomy that we have to be fully ourselves that maybe past generations didn't have because the culture didn't allow or accept it. And I want to make that edification because I don't want anybody to think that we're like, oh, how dare they and whatever, right? When you know better, you do better.
Right. Well, and it's also being self aware of the messages that you have carried with you and are holding on to, which sometimes those messages could come across as good from the person, but the way you carry it, the way you analyze it can become hurtful or it can be a boundary holding yourself back. And so, how do we change that mindset? How do we reframe it, as you said? So, like, I think a lot of people, uh, or it's fed to us that we were stubborn or hard headed or bossy or difficult or emotional, right? When I really look at being strong willed as having inner strength, as having a conviction to follow through on your ambitions, to stand up for your beliefs. That to me is what being strong willed is. And sure, like inequality, right? I also struggle with perfectionism. It can be wonderful and it can be a beast, right? So anything like that can be 100% good or 100% bad, how it's used. And so I want to lean into, okay, God has given me this. I really had this from such a young age, was born with this. So, how can I use this gift for good? And how
Exactly.
is it that I can impact the world for good? And how is it that I could help others? Because I'm willing to speak out and stand on my convictions when others may not have a voice. So, I'm starting to go off on my little soapbox here, but I think
No,
it's
I think it's great. But I want to add though that it's also about using it with grace towards yourself. Oftentimes people that I'm not going to use the word struggle, but people that deal with perfectionism or being strong-willed and all of those things, there's this there's this thing inside of us. I don't know if it happens with men. I just don't know. But as women, where we then say, okay, how can I turn this outward and help others? But there's also an element about that is being like, well, how is this helping me? How is this allowing me to live in my purpose and experience joy for myself? And the helping other part is great, and obviously, I that's important to me. But I also think there's something about turning that inwards and what is it doing for me as well, that puts me in the space that makes me full and healthy and abundant and all of those things. And
absolutely.
one of the things I like about the language you're using is never once in that dialogue did you use my least favorite word in the English language. And no, it is not the word moist, because I know that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's the word
You went
too,
there.
Too, right?
Mm, right.
When people are saying, I'm too emotional, I'm too, strong willed, or I'm too bossy. And because that word is so often attributed to girls and
Mhm.
women, right? To make
Right.
it seem like there is such a thing as being too much of yourself. And
Mm.
and I just don't believe in that. It's like you lean into the things, like you said, the things that are going to help you in the world and help you be a contributor to making the world a better place. That can never be too much. Yes, can you learn how to use it in the right places and times and
As
control
you're
it a little bit?
healthier, right, as you are healthier,
Exactly.
it's going to come out in healthier ways. Absolutely.
Exactly. Exactly. Do you remember the first time someone celebrated the fact that you were strong-willed?
I don't know if it was that direct. I feel like I need to go back a little bit in my story that there was this point because I think it helps lead to where it's at. What I would say the celebration is of where I needed to get out of a really toxic marriage. And it was because of my being strong-willed that I was able to walk through what was an incredibly difficult path, more than what I can talk about here. But to get out of that and to be willing to say, I'm walking away with absolutely nothing, without a penny to my name, so that I can be in a healthier place and have my children in a healthier place. And so from there, I set my mind to building a business from the ground up, because at the time I was homeschooling one of my kids and just really in a lot of ways home with my children. And I didn't want to change that. And all the jobs I was looking at switching to really support my family did not allow for me to be the present mother I wanted to be. So I said, you know what? Like, here's my beliefs and values about what kind of mom I want to be. And so I'm going to build a business that allows me to be that. And my business, I want to be purposeful and I want to be intentional and I'm going to make a difference in the world with it. Right. So combining my beliefs and values were very big in that. And it was recently sitting down with a friend, and I was telling her about some of the things going on with our company and the excitement and all that's going on, and how we're, helping these massive international nonprofits who are helping vulnerable and orphaned children around the world, and telling her about this. And she just looked at me with tears and she said, I'm just so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you. And she is one of my friends who in the beginning was like, why are you doing this? Why are you starting something new? Why don't you just go like the easy route? I want to say, in a sense, which is not a bad thing, but it was that strong willed. And I know that in that moment, she didn't say, ooh, I'm celebrating you being strong willed, but it was celebrating. She was recognizing how I had used this gift of strong willed that God has given me to really go after this and do this. And so I feel like in that moment is one of the times that I felt the most celebrated for that
And
gifting.
seen, probably.
Mhm.
And were you able to accept and reflect that compliment without deflection?
I think I was. I really was. I know that that is something that a lot of women can struggle with, and I have at times. I feel like in the past decade, I heard that this is what this part of my life is for, of like where you're coming into your own and accepting and living in it. And it was a moment of just saying thank you, and but also telling her thank you too. I turned it around and thanked her for the way that she supported me so much of the way.
Of course.
Um,
And
so
and so there's one component of it, right? You come out of the womb screaming and you're strong-willed and you have an opinion and all of that. And I would imagine a lot of women can relate to that. But there's a completely other thing when it's like, okay, I just got out of a marriage. I have children to support, and I've got to make some money because I don't have any. I'll just start a business, right? And I know it probably was not that quite that simple, but that takes a level of fortitude that comes from somewhere else. It's not just about being strong-willed. There's a self-belief that you can even do something like that. And so where do you think that emanates from?
I I do think a lot of that is strong-willed. Part of what is being strong-willed is that determination and resilience. And I heard a beautiful description that if determination is the rope that pulls you up the mountain, resiliency is the harness that catches you if you fall. And so I think because I was also willing to say, one, building this business isn't the hardest thing I've ever done. This is right. There's a lot harder things. So I knew it was going to be like a long term hard, right? A lot of determination. I was willing to also say, I'm willing to fail and shut this down and go do something else. but I was determined to try.
And almost like there's something missing if I don't at least try, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And let me say right now for any woman who's listening who may be going through a divorce or a job loss or a transition in life, the path I took of starting my own business is not the path for everyone, and that's okay too. This is the path that I felt a strong conviction to run after and was confirmed through just conversations and God opening doors, and I ran after it. And I failed along the way. There are some embarrassing things that are so embarrassing of how I handled maybe a first, you know, client interaction not going well or different things where it's like gives me that lump in my throat, but it's like, okay, I had the resiliency to jump back up to say I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to move forward. And
Mm.
part of that being strong-willed I think is also confidence like you were saying, but it's the confidence to make decisions that align with the goals I'm going after or the values. So there's not a lot of right, you might call it independence even but that ability to make those decisions based off of what you know your beliefs and values are.
And I feel I'm a woman that does not have children, but I feel like I would be remiss to not say that while there are these cultural beliefs that, generations of women have dealt with about being meek and seen and not heard and, sugar and spice and all things nice and all those, idioms that go around it. There is so much research around this, but women are the backbone of society and culture. They lift up communities. They're taking care of the homes. They're doing all of these things that traditionally we have not placed a value on in the cultural lexicon as being quote unquote work or important. It's just disposable. But if we didn't, we wouldn't have the grown-ups or the titans of industry that we have, right? It's a mother who raised them. It's a mother who has done that and ran her own business, or like every mother runs her own business, whether they call it that or not. I think there's an element of that that we don't celebrate enough in culture that builds women up, whether they are working moms, stay at home moms, either or, that they have so much ability and strength and resilience and all of these things to be able to do all of that and be the backbone for all of these other people's dreams and things that they move forward with. I get a little, it's weird because I'm not a mom, but I get choked up by that because you see all these people who are so strong and yet they don't always recognize it or see it because the world is not celebrating it. Not that we need external validation, but even in that moment you talked about with your friend, you didn't necessarily need her to say she was proud of you. But hearing that, it validates the hard work, it validates the embarrassing moments. It does help go, okay, I needed that little green flag of a reminder. And sometimes we
Right.
need that in life. And
Right.
so I just think that's awesome.
We do have natural tendencies, and some of us lean more towards that strong willed, right? It's why I'm one of four siblings or one of four kids, and why I had that scarlet letter of strong willed on me, and my two sisters and brother didn't. We just had different natural tendencies. I think the more that we celebrate the women who are naturally strong willed, the more it will empower other women to lean into being strong because we need strong women in the workplace. We need strong women in the homes. We need them in our communities and government because our voices are an important part of decisions that are being made at every level. And we need strong women who are going to stand up for the convictions, especially the ones that are unique to women, to be in those places where decisions are being made. And it takes a woman being strong to say, hey, I'm going to step into that male dominated field and have a woman's voice heard. I know we've talked some about kids, and my daughter is one of those very strong-willed women. Parents always joke about like, "I hope you have a child just like you."
Yes.
I got that in every single way, and I think she is absolutely beautiful, and I'm regularly trying to encourage her beautiful gift of being strong-willed And so one of the things we do is we talk about these role models, these female role models who are strong willed. And as I was saying this, I thought of Jane Goodall through her pioneering research, on chimpanzees and relentless environmental advocacy. She profoundly impacted wildlife conservation and reshaped completely our understanding of the natural world. But she was strong-willed not only to help her to follow her convictions, but it helped her persist in this male-dominated field. I know that there are different thoughts and feelings on this, but did she come in with a certain level of that quietness because of what she'd grown up in, but with the strong will that she was able to sit and watch those chimpanzees differently than maybe her male counterparts? I don't know, but there are examples like that
Yeah. And
where
she
I
just
want
celebrated
to.
90 years, right? She's been doing this a long time
Yeah.
and which is amazing. I think too there's a component of a one-dimensionality to defining things like that. You can be strong-willed and quiet. You can be strong-willed and loud. And we often, I think as women, it becomes a one-dimensional description of what that looks like. And so I think Jane Goodall is a really good example because she is a little bit more still in
Well, poised.
yeah, and poised is a good word for it, but it's also like she
Mhm.
speaks only when she needs to,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she's not loud and boisterous and all of those things. She's just very obviously she knows what she's talking about and she's educated and she's confident in that. And so she doesn't have to do some things that other people might feel they have to do to be heard. And maybe
Right.
that wasn't always the case, but definitely in her majestic nature that she is in now. I literally just saw an interview with her a couple weeks ago. She just it exudes from her, right? And so she might say 3 words where someone else would say 23, and you got more from her because it's just like you believe it and her conviction and all of that. And I think that creating dimensionality to what these things mean for women, I think is also really important, especially as a next generation comes out. We use all these words. I even think about it in dating profiles. Every single dating profile says basically the same thing, but we're not all the same, right? So we might all be looking for funny and kind and generous, but those things mean different things to different people. Like different people have different senses of humor and all of those types of things. So it's about finding that niche that means something for you. And
Right.
with the explosion of the internet and digital media and things like that, there are more places for more people to be heard and to share what they love and do what they love that maybe weren't available to us in the 80s and 90s. And so we were in smaller boxes, but there were more of us in them. And now there's
Mhm.
more boxes and less people in them. And so you get to explore a little bit more, which I imagine as a parent is very cool to watch for your kids and see all the spaces that they can be in and explore and take advantage of.
Yeah. I think in the same way that with my children, I often talk about we have more than one emotion that we experience. So we can be excited about something and nervous and angry at someone who just offended you. So you can
And still
experience.
love them.
Right, and still love them, and in the same way, I love doing positive framing with my children around those qualities that I see most prominent in them, and so for my daughter, middle schooler, strong-willed, how is it that I can help her frame that as determination and passion and leadership? And also bring into that one of the traits I want to continue to encourage in her is empathy. And so talking about the different ways that she can use that to show empathy, because I think empathy is so important. And looking, at those role models and how is it that she can make a difference in the world using the various attributes. But I think that framing and framing not just one, but all the attributes really that make up your
Yeah.
child is so
So
important.
empowering too, for them, right? Because it's like, "Oh, I can use these together and I can mix and match them, and I can" you know? I think when we grow up as children, because of the way that kids learn and the development of the brain, right? you grow up and things are very black and white. There are good guys and there are bad guys. And the older you get, there are more colors of gray that come into your life.
Right.
And if you aren't being prepared for the gray, that introduction of gray can be extremely overwhelming and
Mhm.
overpowering and hard to understand how to navigate. And so I love this idea of framing things in different ways, whether it be emotions or attributes and traits, because it allows them to see the gray and see how,
Mhm.
you might be empathetic in this way, but your brother is empathetic in this way, or and being able to show them good qualities in themselves, but also those around them and how they use them for good. I think that's really empowering.
Right. Well, and there's also the standpoint of there are times when, and I understand this personally because my daughter's personality and mine are very similar, that she can get so angry when the rules aren't followed in a game
Yes.
because she has a strong conviction and belief that we should follow the rules and the game is going to be more fun when the rules are followed. And if you aren't following the rules, like you should be out. Right.
I'm the
So
same way.
right. So when her temper is rising because of that, it's a good moment to step back and actually talk about the positive traits that that is coming from. Even in that moment where it's coming out maybe as a negative, to talk about this is a really positive trait in you, that you have this strong conviction. Now, how it's coming out right now, we can then talk about that empathy piece and how do you think the other people are viewing this? But here's why this is such an important trait in you, right? So, even in those difficult moments, I think we can go to the heart of what's happening. I'm not a parenting expert, but I think a lot of them talk about what is the issue, what's the heart behind it more than the actual action you're seeing. And so I love to do that with those traits that are so beautiful, but that can be difficult at times. And so, how can we talk about it in that positive light so she doesn't walk away from that conversation feeling more ashamed of herself or feeling like her passion is a negative?
And the flip side of that is also why sometimes it's okay to break the rules and color outside of the lines and understanding those distinctions.
Right.
Because rigidity can block you from some blessings if you're too rigid with something, right?
Yes.
And so it's showing the flip side of those things. I think that's really cool. So it is you as you look. You said you had a daughter. How many children do you have? Sorry,
So I have 2. So
two.
I have one who's in middle school and one who's an older elementary. So a girl,
Boy
boy.
and girl and a boy. Okay, which
Yeah.
is kind of cool because you get to see both and
Yes.
both of them. So how do you think the lessons of your childhood moving into adulthood, how do you see them play out in your own, effort to raise your children?
That's a deep question, Dawn.
Well, and let's frame it around empowering them to be their best,
Right.
person, right? Because I think that's a little bit more in line with what we're talking about here.
Right. So I think along the lines of positive framing, like we talked about, which wasn't necessarily something that I grew up with. I also know I have a lot of tools at my hands. And for anyone listening, I highly recommend counseling, even if it's parenting counseling to help you be a better parent. I look at counseling as like the house insurance. So you want to own a home without having insurance. And I think counseling can be like that insurance of someone just that you've established a relationship with that you can fall back on to get just really wise advice and help you make decisions. So
I
that's
don't
an
know
aside
if this
though.
is naive, but I did not know there was such a thing as parent counseling, so I actually think that's
Oh,
very cool, like,
yes.
because it's not an easy job, right? It's probably the hardest
Yeah.
job in the world, so that that is really cool. I
But with that, I would say one of the things, and I can't claim this for myself, that I learned in, parent counseling is one of the best gifts I can give my children is to teach them to disagree with me in a respectful way. So to have their own opinions, to make choices, and to disagree with me, whether that's about bedtime or about whether they should be listening to a certain song on the radio or not.
Mm.
And for us to have a discussion.
Yeah.
So the answer, it's not teaching them to disagree with me and then I'm going to automatically give them what they've asked for, but it's giving them the voice to have that opinion. And then we might talk around, okay, well, what are the pitfalls of that? Or, okay, you just asked me. Sometimes it's, hey, mom, I know you said go get ready for bed, but it's going to take me one more minute to finish this page of the book. Can I finish it? You know what, buddy? Sure. Thank you for just, right? Right. So like they're learning to have a conversation rather than just going, "No, I don't want to go to bed," right? And sometimes it's the, "Hey mom, I really want to stay up doing XYZ." And I'll say, "Oh, but remember you have that test tomorrow and then you have 4 hours of your musical theater production practice. How do you think you're going to feel during your test if you stay up longer? Okay? How do you think you're going to feel during practice and your whole production team is counting on you because you're one of the leads?" And so then it's a conversation, and I'm still helping them make a choice in that,
Yeah.
guiding them as the parental figure, but helping them have that choice. And so I think, especially with our children who lean toward being strong willed, how important it is for them, especially to
Yeah.
have that feeling of choices, which is something that growing up, there was one opinion and I had to have the same opinion. There was one belief and I
Because
had to
I
have
said so, right?
right? There's the drill sergeant telling me when I do something, and if they say jump, it's how high. And so teaching my kids to have their own voice and it is I think one of the most powerful gifts I can give them.
It's also context, right? Because even as an adult, I'm a very emotional person, and a lot of that, there's a misconception that that means I'm sad all the time, and it's not. My emotion normally comes from overwhelm, and a lot of time it's because I don't have the context of why something is. I'm an aunt to 3 nephews, and they are like the sun, the moon, everything. But because I have never had kids, I don't oftentimes know things that maybe a parent knows automatically, right? So I had an instance where, and it's the cutest video in the world, and I just loved it, and I posted it. And one of the parents got upset with me about it, and I didn't know why. And luckily I asked. I was like, what did I do wrong? I don't understand. And it was because we were reading stories and this little cute little 3 or 4-year-old. And I was like, okay, we're reading a story. And he said, yes, we're going to read 2 stories. But normally my family only lets me read 1 story. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is our special secret. And that was the key, was that and when they explained that to me, my mind was blown. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry." But I didn't have the context to know that because I didn't have a child. So I imagine as a child who, they're developing and learning, they just know they're having fun and they wanna stay up. They are not thinking about tomorrow, right? And so providing that context then helps their little brains start to digest and understand why things are happening instead of, "Well, you'll know when you're older. It's because I said so." And so I think that's amazing, but I also think it works for adults. Like this idea of context, because we all are different and we're in different situations, right? And so sometimes I just think we ignore context because maybe you grew up in an environment where conversation and dialogue didn't happen. And so you didn't know how to do that. Like it blew my mind that as a parent, you have to physically teach them how to hold a spoon. I don't know why I didn't know that, but as I'm watching my brothers and sisters raise kids, I'm so in awe of them and the amount of attention and time and energy that is put into developing this little human, right? And it's just and then if you work on top of that, I'm like, I don't even know how you do that. Like, I don't do any of that, and I come home and I'm exhausted. So, how does that work, and how do you stay sane and all of those things? And so context has been helping me understand that and helping me understand how to have better conversations with them when I'm one-on-one with them as well, because I want to be a safe landing place for them. Where, like, I have a nephew who's very sensitive, and I was a very sensitive kid. So I identify so much with them, and I want to give him what I needed, but that's not the answer. It needs to be what he needs. And so being able to understand that and not put my own stuff on him, but still be able to give him maybe the support that I was missing, but in a way that supports him the way he needs to be supported.
Absolutely. What we're talking about is listening
Yeah.
and dialoguing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and when you listen and you dialogue, it shows that you value their opinions, that you value their autonomy.
Yeah.
And it encourages them to express themselves clearly and respectfully, which is also powerful in navigating challenges or difficult situations, which we know that we will forever have. I remember saying one day to a mentor in my life who's about 20 years older than me, I was like, do you still face like really difficult challenges? Like where you don't like in relation, like part of me was like, surely there's a point where it just like
It all
it's a little
clicks.
right.
It never clicks, right?
It's like, I knew the answer, but I just wanted
And
her to
that's
be
the
like,
human condition, right? We are supposed to be better every year. We're
"Mhm,
and what better means can be defined differently by everybody, but it's this idea that if you it's like a shark, right? If they stop swimming, they die. And if we stop learning and growing, we die. That's why you see a lot of people who retire early and don't have hobbies or things that keep them busy, their life expectancy is less, right? It's because the human condition is to consistently be learning and growing and failing and all of those things. And I think when, I spent some time with some college kids yesterday, and there was a conversation where it was like, oh, I can't wait to be your age because things are going to be so much easier. And then I'm going, well, I remember being on this campus and I wish I was back on this campus, like it's the grass is not always greener, right? It's just a matter of like perspective and how you learn that and how you take in that perspective. And the other thing is, this is so old and it shows how old I am, but I used to be a real big Oprah stan. And there was an episode, I was probably in my early 20s, where she was talking about kids of divorced parents. And the expert there was saying how kids see so much more than adults do, because they don't have the worries of adults and they don't have things distracting them. And so even when we think we have this strong front or we're doing what's right for them, they can see if there's a light in our eyes when we look at them. They can see if they're darkened. They can see if we are happy as individuals, and they sense it. They may not be able to verbalize it, but they sense it. And that always stuck with me as like, how like, if I was going to become a parent, how do I become a parent that is fully living out my dreams so it can be an example to them and they can see the light in my eyes, but they also see the light in my eyes that they produce. And so I don't have kids and I likely will not, but that's the philosophical ideology that I use with my nephews and whatever continues to happen in that realm. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, so hopefully there'll be tons more. But is like they can see the light that is within me from what I do for myself and the life that I live, but they can also see the enjoyment that I get from them. And they know that they are special to me and they are loved and they are protected and those types of things. And I think the type of lessons that you're imparting on your children or the way that you're talking to them, that is what they get to see in that, right? Because you also then, when they challenge you, get to see how their little brains work and like,
I guess."
how smart
And
and
sometimes it's good for me to be challenged too.
exactly, exactly,
Yes.
because you learn and that like just like we say to respect your elders, you know, we both have a mutual friend named Brad Montague, and
Mhm.
Brad Montague is the creator of Kid President and many, many, many other things since then. But one of the things I think he brought into our worldview is how much we can learn from kids and the power of learning from that. And we just, when we were kids, it was all about respecting your elders and learning from your elders and the wise. There's so much wisdom in children out of the naivete of being beaten down by the world, which we all experience as we age and things like that. And they're so pure in what they deliver to us that we can learn a lot from letting go of the things that we don't need to keep and fighting about things that don't matter, whatever that is.
Absolutely. We do. I do a thing with my kids every Monday night. It's sort of just one of those rhythms that we put in, and they've come to expect it and look forward to it. And sometimes they save up and answer because we ask the same questions every Monday. Like they're like, "Ooh, I'm going to say this on Monday at dinner." So which we kind of do something similar actually at my workplace too on Mondays, but we do a personal best,
Mhm.
an educational best, and a challenge or a failure. So, in other words, it might be something like, oh, I personal best was playing with my friends at the park, and oh, I did really good on a spelling test. And then the challenge, like my son's recently, was I learned not to lie when I'm sad about something, and we all cheered for him and said, "Yay!" And why I say failure too is it can be like, oh, I pitched a sale today that I didn't get. And it was for a new type of client, and I was really excited about it, and I didn't get it. And we all go, yay. Because we talk about it in the sense of when you're failing, you're often learning something new. It means you're trying something new. Even when I took my daughter out to play golf for the first time, I remember that was her fail that week of like, she was like, I did horrible when I tried to play golf with mom. And we're like, yay, you tried something new. So and just I think that goes back to like what we were saying, that framing. Like, how is it that we're framing these very real life experiences in a way that, right, there are times where there was the initial conversation with my son when he had lied about something when he was sad, where we had to deal with the messiness of that lie. But then he was able to go a few days later and go, hey, like, I learned not to lie, and we can celebrate at that moment.
Well,
I
and that
don't
one, that got my heart because the lying about being sad or lying when you're sad, that is so often when it happens. So we don't wanna put that on other people. So, like, what a beautiful thing for him to recognize, right? My little five-year-old nephew, I ask a similar question every time I see them, and I ask, "What did you learn new this week that you didn't know last week?" And the five-year-old, last time I saw him, he said, "Auntie, I learned not to write with marker on my face." And I looked at him and I go, "Did you not know that before?" And he goes, "Not really, but I definitely know now." And I was like, "Okay." And it just like there's also some joy that comes from that, right? Like it like the way their brains work and he's a little mischievous, so it was like perfectly framed for him, which I
Oh,
love.
that's hilarious. Well, isn't it true that as adults, we're continually growing and we don't know what we don't know until we know it? And it is no, I really didn't know that before today. Or no, I didn't. Yeah, that seems like a really basic life lesson that I should have learned to say this in this situation instead of that. But it didn't dawn on me until this point in my life and, you know, whatever.
That
So,
Instagram trend of, like, "I was today years old when I
oh,
learned this," right? And I feel like I learned those things every day. I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know that either." So we have a couple minutes left, and I wanna move into a little bit of how do you're a leader, you're a partner, which is for people who don't know, that's kind of like a part owner, right? Like, you've got this stake in the company, and so you're responsible for other people. So we've talked about this responsibility with children and what you've learned through that and how you navigate that. How do you then employ that into your leadership style or the way, now you're onto this third business, which is so exciting, right? So how do you use maybe the things you've learned from your own upbringing and then bringing up children, and how do you take that into work and then use that to maybe navigate your leadership style?
I mean, a few things. One is I'm really clear on who our clients are and who they are not. And we often turn away people who do not align with our values. And that is very much core to who we are as a company. Also, core to us is we talk about one of our core values is people first. And we have built our company around it. I laugh that we spend half the year off and like not actually at work. So we have every other Friday, we're closed for a dark day. We have 11 like paid holidays. We close the week between Christmas and New Year's. When you take all those Fridays and those 11 holidays and the week between, you're already at 2 months, like 60 days or something And then on top of that, we do unlimited paid time off, and we encourage employees to take like a minimum of 10 days. So our big thing is like, we want our people to first and foremost, when we say people first, we want them to be taking care of themselves. So that is a strong conviction that I have, and that I want for my team. So being strong willed for me means if a client comes to me late, asking for a request for the next day, a quick turnaround or something, I'm going to look at the capacity of my team. I'm going to see, is this actually doable to do in a healthy way? Am I just trying to take their money and then pass this on? And so those convictions are strong for me. And we also, though, with our clients, it's people first. And so we want to care for them and love them well. And that shines through too, in that, I really believe that a lot of these nonprofits, they have limited resources, and that those resources have been entrusted to them and to do well with them. And then they are entrusting them to us to use them wisely. And I take that very seriously. And that is a strong conviction that I have. So when someone comes to me saying, "Hey, I want you to help me blow up our social media," I say, "Okay, well, stop. What's your goal? Oh, you want to raise, an additional $200,000 this year." Well, that's probably not going to do it. And though I know I could get you to spend a lot of money with us creating this, amazing social media account, that's not what's going to accomplish your goals. So I'm going to help direct you to what is best for you, or to someone else to do that if that's what you really want to do. But I don't want to waste that money. So those are a few ways that I see it playing through.
And you obviously found partners, and I'm gonna use a term that I think I use too much, but you found partners who were equally yoked with you, who had those same beliefs. And so what what do you think brought you to those people so that you could build something together based on the same values? Because I think, people are gonna hear this. I've probably told you this for years, like, when there is a role, I'm ready because I just believe so much in what you all are doing. I'm sure a lot of people will look at your organization and say, "Wow, that's an organization I wanna work with." But finding partners at that top level that feel that way, that are incumbent is the wrong word, but they're responsible for a bottom line and a revenue number and a generating revenue. Like, how did you come across these people?
So Louder initially started as my client, and then I jumped board with them and brought some of my writers over, and they treated me as an equal. I have to say, I have two men who are business partners with me. I mentioned Ben Stewart already and Chris Thurman, and they treat me as an equal. They see me being strong willed as an asset. And I don't think they've ever called me strong willed, but they've called that out. Chris especially has been really great to call out, like, I see this in you and this in you. And like, this is someone I want to partner with, and here are the things we can accomplish with that. So he saw it as that asset and not a detriment. He didn't see it as a challenge to his position. He saw it as a compliment to the way he leads. And I think that's key. We I'm really proud too of just like the benefits we have for the women in our workplace, and for when they have babies, and paid time off, even though we're kind of a small boutique agency, and the way we have done that for a lot of women. And so I just see us raising up women and saying, "Hey, we want to make a place for you in the workplace if this is where you want to be. And we're going to offer you the flexibility. And oh, you need to move to part-time. That's okay. Like, we're going to allow that." And also, though, in how he speaks to the women that are our clients, they don't speak to them any differently than they would a man. And that's huge. I think, especially coming from a place where women were supposed to be meek and quiet and not have a voice and be the submissive ones, to see them listening to female leaders is huge, right? And raising up females.
I imagine that part of like that, I think that's beautiful because you're, um, recognizing the role that they had in that. But I would imagine there's a role that you had in it as well, that probably is something to do with confidence in that you weren't willing to sacrifice your value set for a job, right?
Right.
And in some ways that's you started from nothing. So I don't want to say this in a
Right.
way that doesn't make sense, but there is a certain amount of privilege to be able to do that, right? 'Cause
Absolutely.
and I don't know how to say it other than that, but there's a certain chutzpah or whatever that's inside of you. And what told you that you could set that line and that you shouldn't settle?
I feel like that's how I've lived my whole life. And I also recognize that that is what um, can be offensive to other people. I think though sometimes we think of strong convictions as just being for our own sake and standing up for what we believe in ourselves. It's also for me giving people a voice or being the leader that others need so they can follow their own convictions and beliefs and values. And so for me, I don't want another woman who wants to work and be a mom have to settle for, I'm just going to be home because there's not a workplace where I can work, or for the mom who says, I have to work financially, I have to work, and I just have to settle for a place where I'm going to be gone from my child for 10 plus hours a day because that's the only type of work environment that's offered. Right. And even in the sense of, I think of Simone Biles even a little bit. So she was not just a voice for herself when she quote unquote quit, right? That's how a lot of the world labeled it when she quit in the middle of the Olympics. She was not just, she stood up for her own beliefs of, I need to take care of my mental health, but also paved the way for other gymnasts and athletes to say, hey, this is no longer healthy for me. Yes, I've been pursuing a goal, but this is no longer matching my values and it's not healthy or good or safe for me. And so for me, that's the kind of leader I want to be for my teammates, both male and female, to say what is healthy or not healthy. And I'm going to help set the stage that we talk about it too. Like that whole dialogue, right? Listening, dialoguing, how important that is in leadership so that they can also step up and say, here's where I'm struggling, or, you asked me to take on this task, but this has been really a mental drag on me. I'd prefer not to do something like this in the future. It's like, okay, let's figure out how someone else can do this. Let's not
Yeah.
put this on you again.
And I think that's oftentimes a misconception about leadership because that's very much my leadership philosophy, right? And it always has been is, I worked in marketing for 20-25 years. And when I talk to my team, I always say 85% of my job is you. The other 50, and I'm not supposed to say that to my boss because they're like, no, the marketing plan is number one and revenue and all of that. But if you are happy, if you're supported, if you are doing what is in line with what you are supposed to be doing, right? And what I mean by that is your purpose and what makes you smile and thrive and live and all of those beautiful things, then the work will happen because it does, right? You surround yourself with good people that feel supported, then your job is going to be easy as a leader. And so my goal is to get you where you want to be, whether it is here or somewhere else.
Yes.
That's where you're going to do your best work and you're going to be celebrated and promoted and appreciated and all of those things. And so I've had a number of employees where it's like I have one that tells me this, she talks about it all the time, where I was like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're not happy here. So I get it. You need money and you're not ready to do what you want to do, but let's get you there. And so let's talk about that. What do you love to do? What makes you lose time? What gets you excited to go home and talk about? And let's get you training and education and let's coach towards that. And let's set a plan for getting you out of here. And a lot of people wouldn't do that, right? But she started her own business and she did all of these things. She had a kid and she's in a place in life where I know I was in service to her and I got her best work because of that. So while I had her, She was the top performer. She was the most promoted person because she wanted to do that work because she felt supported in that work. And I think that is our role as a leader. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't be leading people. And I also what I love about Louder is that or the your guys' leadership philosophy, I should say. It's not like I've been in the building and we're whatever, right? But it's also about championing the fact that if you're happy at home, you're happy at work, and those things kind of collide and work together. And so we support those side projects and those passions, and we don't see them as a threat. That's when I think companies don't get it, right? They're not listening because people are going to get so annoyed at me, but because I say it so much, but we have to stop talking about cultural fit. Cultural fit is a myth. It creates homogeny and it creates people you wanna have a beer with, not people you wanna work with, because they don't put their opinions in. If I hire you because you have something I don't have. And that's your example with Chris, right? This is what I see in you. I don't have that. So with we work together, we are so much stronger and better in that. And so this idea of cultural contribution, what are you gonna bring to this organization that we don't already have? We will naturally grow. And the myth around women in the workplace is that it's about fairness and what's right. And we have to stop talking about that. Giving women positions, equal opportunities, growth, leadership positions, a voice in the room, it creates economic growth for everybody and opportunity for everybody. Because we know that for every 10% of women that are in a leadership team and organization, their revenues grow a minimum of 1 to 2%. When revenue grows, there's more opportunity for everybody. We get to hire more people, promote more people, get them into the positions they like. And so feminism, as people like to refer to it, or equity and parity of the gender, it isn't just about women. It's men and women, and it's the growth of our GDP and the growth of our economic climate and culture and landscape. And when we start looking at it that way, it's not about competition, right? It's about growth for everybody. And I just don't think the dialogue is around that enough. And so I love hearing that that's what your partners give to you, and then you're able to also then reciprocate with what you have. And so it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And that's when companies have long-term sustainable growth.
Yeah, I think for an agency, you see turnover pretty high. And we have had our people stay around and then they have babies and they come back and they um just really exciting things going on because of that. I think a lot of it is what you said of the supporting them outside even the workplace, in the sense too of a lot of people, like one of my best writers, she uses her Fridays and spare time to write a book. She's writing a book. Um, and so people are able to pursue, like you said, some of their own passions and their own side jobs if they want to. If they're have their own like entrepreneurial spirit and they're going, man, I want to spin this up and see if something happens with it. Oh, they have the ability to do that. And I think they are happier when they're in the workplace.
And then when they win, they might be your customer. So you keep them for a
Yes.
lifetime, right? Because they feel
Yes.
supported and they feel connected to you and they know you're good. So it's like, okay, well then let's partner with them now because I want to continue working. Like I have a girl who works for me last night, and she got a job at a company, and she asked if she could stay on freelance with me. And I was like, of course. And I was like, I'm a cockroach. You are not getting rid of me. Like I stay around forever. Like we're in this together, and that's what I want to do because that is my purpose. My purpose is to help others and embody what they want to be and what they want to do, especially women and girls, right? And so if I were to say, "Oh, you got a job, peace out. No more," right? Then that is not living in my purpose, and that's not being supportive and all of those things. And so I love that philosophy. That's why I keep calling you guys and talking to you guys, just because I find that culture just so beautiful. And I think it makes it really interesting to chat with you all and see how you bring all of those things together. So I think it's really awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about a lot, and kind of gone all over the board. And so as we kind of close up here, is there something you wish that you had known early on that knowing now makes things a little bit easier for you to lean into who you are as an individual?
Being strong willed is beautiful,
Mm, I love that.
and it is okay for it to be the number one character trait that you share. If someone were to ask you, what are your top three character traits? I think we often want to turn toward the, oh, I'm meek and I'm funny, or I'm those what I would say are the acceptable traits. Sort of like almost we have those acceptable emotions of joy and, happy and comfortable. And then there's the what we might consider the uncomfortable emotions or the uncomfortable characteristics. And I would encourage people to embrace being strong willed as even one of their most beautiful character traits because of the way that it not just helps you, but can help the world when you stand by your convictions and let your beliefs and values lead you.
I love that. I love that. I thank you so much for doing this. I know how busy you are, and I just I knew that yours was a voice that people needed to hear. And I love the way that it's framed around what is important to you and what you value in life, being your children, and how you framed the life that you wanted and built it for yourself. And obviously you had people to help you along the way, and there's a community, right? Because that's what it takes, a
Right.
village and a community. But you stayed the course and you believed in yourself. And I think that's something we can all learn from. So thank you very much for being a guest on our show.
Absolutely. I look forward to chatting again sometime.
Of course, of course. You just got to hear my friend Janelle Suzanne talk about the power of being strong willed and transforming negative labels into strengths and owning those strengths and moving forward and using that to empower your children and the next generation, using that in your professional life or your leadership style and to do good in the world. And we talked a lot about the role of motherhood and raising children and you know, typically I wait to record these outros, but I wanted to do it right away because there's just so much emotion in me right now in what we talked about because there's something so empowering about seeing people living in their purpose and their strengths and owning them and having that confidence to do that. And it's not arrogance, but it's a belief that your voice is worthy of being heard in the world and it can amplify not only your own goals, messages, and missions in life, but it can help amplify the missions of other people. And I hope that you, as a listener, got something and felt as empowered as I do right now. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do once I turn off this microphone. I feel like I'm going to be working like crazy today just because I have so many ideas and inspirations from that to lean into my own strengths and my own convictions and not let outdated narratives or my own false narratives control the direction that I go. Um, that the lesson of reframing that we talked about and some people might poo-poo that, but this idea that, we all have our truths. We all have our version of the story. And those versions, while true, are not always accurate. And so sometimes we have to break that down and look at the lens of what our experiences in our lives have brought us through to realize if that negative thought in our mind is a lie or if it is the real truth. And 9 times out of 10, it's probably a lie. And it's built from some sort of trauma or some sort of belief that we don't deserve the things that we want in the world. And so really working to logically go through those things and understand them without emotion and without the framing of other people and reframe what they mean for us and turn them into something that something like fuel that can propel us forward to do our best work. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you felt empowered and you come out of this more confident than ever. And if you are a person in an organization who needs an agency to work with, I cannot recommend Louder Agency enough and the work that Janelle, Ben, and Chris do. So you can find them at louderagency.com, where their mission is to help you amplify your mission. I hope you all treat each other well, have a great day, and come back and see us for next week's episode. Thank you so much.